Have you ever wondered how the old masters like Rembrandt built such powerful, lifelike drawings? Well, it all begins with a solid block-in drawing. In today's video, I'll be working on the first stage of a Rembrandt master copy, and I'll be employing the Loomis method as well as the use of angles, alignments, and shapes to create an accurate foundation. This block-in stage is the first and most important step in creating a successful, realistic painting. Think of it like piecing together a puzzle. Initially, you're building up marks, then you're adding more information, and gradually you're building a complete framework. Once complete, this drawing will act as the perfect base for a full-color oil painting, and illustrating the point that no matter what the medium, every great piece of artwork starts at this place. This is an essential skill set for any artist that's serious about building up their skills. So let's step into this method and learn to see like an artist. This tutorial is part of a new drawing series I have on my Patreon site on how to start your drawings with accuracy. We're going to take and create this preliminary drawing, which will serve as the base for the painting to be done on. Now, in this particular image, we're going to continue with sight size, but we're going to go a step up in terms of building our skill. Then we're going to start to use new tools, and that will be our pencil and our eye. And those are the tools that we're going to develop. Our dexterity and our perceptions. We're going to start with a Loomis head, which is a circle that has then proportions for the brow, the nose, the mouth, and then the jawline all set out. And from there, we will begin to build the breakdown of lights and darks and your shapes and your proportions and angles and all this sort of thing. But really, you'd be amazed how quickly that you will adapt to this. And it's actually a good thing. Because you have to adapt to it, you will adapt and you will get better. You can use your pencil like the measuring stick. What you're going to do is stand back and then take your measuring pencil and you can use it to line things up. But you'll notice what's happening here. Automatically, I am steadying my hand. I'm putting it out forward and I'm using a steadying force so that when I look like, say, the eyes, I can just go across and I can do the eyes, okay? But I use my hand to steady it so that it's not kind of all like this and then even just a little bit kind of moving up or down or whatever. By holding our arm or our wrist, we can go over, pivot, and see exactly where this line for the eyes is. We can do the same thing, the nose, we pivot, and oh look, it's right where the nose is. The mouth, we pivot, we look, oh, there's the mouth. We want to do the angle of the jaw. We do the same thing, we just hold our arm, pivot over, look, angle of the jaw. Anything, here in the hair, same thing. Holding my hand or my arm, pivot over, look. There we go. And so we do this all the way through the drawing. So that's how we can begin to sort of line things up and get our angles. So we can choose any angle, any proportion. And then when we're trying to establish proportion, let's say we want to do the nose. I look for a landmark. Okay, there's the edge of that shadow, and I will go to the bottom of that nose, or I'll go to the edge of this shadow. All I have to do is hold this up. Tip goes on the top shadow, bottom goes on the bottom shadow, pivot over, and I can measure the same thing right there. So my first step is to do what I always do, and that's establish my basic boundaries, the top of the head, the bottom of the chin, and the sides of the head as well, so that I have a sense of what I'm dealing with. The only difference is now I'm not looking at the hair, I'm trying to look at the skull underneath the mass of the hair, because I want to start with my Loomis head. So I'm establishing the basic parameters, and I also want to establish the line that is the central line for the face, from the middle of the forehead down through the nose and the chin. And so I'm looking at those basic boundaries right off the bat. Then I just lightly sketch in a few other little landmarks in between on the different angles in order to help me create a circle. Once I have those, I can then put the circle in, and now I've sort of got myself oriented. I establish the center line from the back of the head. It's generally right around the ear, and it will come across the ball, the front of it, and will establish the brow line of the face. From there, I can then begin to establish the side plane of the head. Okay, so this is the side plane. And what this does is match the side of the brow. This is the top of his hairline here. This is about the halfway mark. So then I establish the center line, which is about 3/4 over to the right. And then from there, I'm going to shave the side of the side plane off from the ball of the head. And that should give me basically where the temple line is around, particularly the right side of the head. I continue to establish the general angles, alignments, and boundaries of the basic shapes of the head. I'm not the least bit interested in details. I want the general parameters and proportions first. Now, one of the things you need to realize about this method is that it's a lot more fluid, shall we say. We put marks down and then they are gradually worked into place. The more information you put down, the more you can assess where your marks are in relationship to everything else, and you make adjustments. So you work very lightly and you make constant adjustments as the new information is coming to you. It's more organic, it's more fluid, and it definitely trains your eye to do the work. So what have I been doing? I created a circle, which I could see went to just above the mouth for the width of the head. And then I created the side plane here. The side plane comes along right about where the brow line is on the temple. And then we slice the side plane off here, which we can see that his face comes down on a much more of a straight angle. It's not round like a ball, it comes down on a straight angle. I then have to establish where my center line is, and I'm looking at proportions. And it looks like this is about 2.5 times the size of this. So that's what I'm looking for. The brow line is halfway the circle. So this space from the hairline is equal to the hairline to the brow line to the nose, and the nose to the jaw. These are perfect thirds. It just so happens that that's the proportions of his face. It's well proportioned. And so it all fits pretty neat and tidy within that model, let's just say. From there, I establish by measuring where the mouth is, make the mark, and where the eye is by going from corner of the eye to the corner of the eye. That's how I know where the eyes are. And so I hold it up to the corner of the eyes, and then I come over, and then I can see the line of where my eyes are. And now the head is beginning to take shape. Using my pencil, I measure from the nose here to the back of the neck. So I measure from there how far that is. Come back here and translate that, and this is the line I get. Once you start to get the hang of this, it's actually pretty easy. Okay, so I feel like I've got the general map of this area pretty much cleaned up. I've gone in and I've changed I've moved the ear down probably close to 1/4 inch. I've changed some of the angles in here, some of the proportions in the neck and the collar, a few little pieces of the, the hair, where they go. So I'm pretty confident about where things are right now. So now I'm going to get in there and I'm going to start placing my features of the face, and then, go from there. First thing I'm going to do is establish the angle of the nose. That will help me sort of get a sense of where the center line is. So you'll notice I'm measuring and establishing the angles in exactly the same way. Some of the proportions are smaller, so I'm really only measuring along my pencil lead in order to get a sense of how big things are, but it's still the same process. And you'll also notice how simple I'm keeping these shapes. I'm not worrying about all the little micro details. I'm looking for the broad angles and proportions, always from the broad to the specific. Once I'm happy with, the angle of the nose and the proportion of it, same with the mouth and the eyes, then I'll go back and work on some of the smaller, more precise details. But I really need to plot all those features in first, accurately in terms of the angles, the sizes, their placement, and the alignments. As I develop the eye, I'm really looking for the general shape of it, but also the proportions of each part of the eye. I'm looking at that very clear almond shape that he has, but also how much of that is the iris and what is the white of the eye in comparison to that iris. I'm looking at the negative shape there as well. And I'm also trying to create the opening of the eye and make it accurate. One of the things that students quite often will make a mistake doing is that they will measure from the eyelid down to the bottom eyelid, and then they'll make that part the whole opening of the eye, and then add another eyelid on top. And so the whole thing is too big, and that's a very common mistake. So make sure that when you measure the eye, as in the opening of the eye that exposes the eyeball, that is small enough. And you'd be surprised actually how small it is in relationship to the rest of the face. Okay, so what am I doing here as I'm moving forward? I'm using other clues to give myself an idea of where things are. So when I have this here, I'm looking at where does the eye sit in relationship to the top of the eyebrow? Where does the side of the eye sit in relationship to the edge of this shadow? This shadow in the edge and the relationship to the edge of the face there. That's why I was able to move the temple in a little bit and also see that it was in alignment with the cheekbone here. And I look for the space in the white of the eyes in relationship to the pupil. I look at the width of the lid in relationship to the entire length of the eye. And it looks like it's 1/3 and 2/3 split there. And I'm also using constantly my pencil to get the measurements of things. So they're like the nose. So I look there, the nose. And so then I could see that angle, or that angle on the temple, or on the cheek, or there on the bottom of the nose, on the eyebrow. So I'm taking it from my image and I'm transferring over. And one of the things to remember, that this is just pencil, okay? You're gonna put it in, and guess what? You've always got your trusty eraser. You just go back in and you make any corrections. And so what I'm doing is I'm looking at the alignment of where's the edge of this eye go with the edge of this eyebrow or that particular shadow. I begin to lay in my flat, even tone in my shadow shapes, and it also helps to see the proportions a lot easier. You can see the space in between spaces a lot easier, and therefore you can go back in and make the necessary changes. If something's too wide or too narrow or whatever it is, it's easier to see when you have them blocked in with a value tone. Then what ends up happening is that we're looking for the shapes that make up these shadow shapes. This is a great example of being able to use shadow shapes and shapes in order to create the features worked out by virtue of the shadows. So this is really, really great in that regard. But in order to get those shapes, you have to realize that there's going to be a domino effect. If one of it is off and you're measuring that, everything all starts to become off. So you have to really work to keep things in alignment and check and double check and come back and really work all this. Now I'm going through the same procedure on the bottom half of the face that I did on the top. I'm looking for not only the shape of the object, as in the nose and the mouth, but I'm looking for the negative spaces in between in order to judge the placement and the size of those features. I put the marks down as best I can, go back, step back, take a look, and make adjustments. Once again, I'm looking for angles, alignments, and negative shapes. Okay, so I've had a little break, and then I go back and I'm carefully checking to, I'm double checking, what is this distance between the hairline and the brow, from the brow, the top of the brow to the bottom of the eye. So I go back in and begin to nudge all the shapes in my nose slightly downward, stepping back constantly, double checking. And it's a funny thing, when you do that, you nudge it a little bit, and you nudge it a little bit, and then all of a sudden it's like it goes click, like a piece of a puzzle that you've managed to just hit the right angle and the right position, and it goes click right in place, and you can see it. So just work on that process, fine tune the drawing, take your time, step back, walk away for a few minutes, and you'll get there. And that's a preview of our block-in drawing for this Rembrandt master copy. With just shapes, angles, and alignments, we've created an accurate framework that'll carry us right through to the finished oil painting. And remember, this skill applies to any medium that you'll use. Whether it's pencil, charcoal, or oils, every realistic image starts with this essential foundation. So keep practicing your block-ins and keep training your eye, and before long you'll find yourself drawing with accuracy, speed, and developing your own unique style. And if you'd like to learn how to create beautiful and realistic drawings but you're not sure how to start, just go to the Patreon link at the end of this video and find out how. And if you enjoyed this lesson, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and hit that notification bell, and feel free to leave a comment below. Thanks very much for watching. And remember, stay creative. This is your time to express yourself. And we'll see you in the next video.